everybody, welcome to Banjo Quest. That was me playing my bridge from the Sinful To Flirt album on the Cumberland Gap track, and I wanted to show you guys how to do that today. Now, tablature for this lesson will be available for patrons over on Patreon. Do check that out, and we're going in deep on this section of the tune, so check us out over there if you want more information. So this section of the tune is something that I added to Cumberland Gap. Don't go to a jam and call this and expect people to play along with you if you go off on this tangent. This really is me sort of exploring ideas of arrangement in old time music and seeing where we can push it. So I wanted to show you guys this, not because I think you should learn this part in particular, but because I want you guys to get a sense for timekeeping without the constant movement of your playing hand, of your striking hand. So one of the keys to this exercise in this module is to make sure that you are playing with a metronome, and then also that you take a break from the metronome and try to keep track of the pulse of the tune and the bridge section internally. So I'll explain more about this at the close of the video. For now, let me just show you a slow version of this bridge. I'm going to take it nice and slow with a metronome so you guys can track my pulse, and then it'll be a little bit easier to understand the phrasing and how it all works together. All right, let me grab my metronome. We're going to set it up at 76 BPM. And hopefully you guys are going to be able to hear this. I'm using analog gear today, so I feel like it. Tired of looking at screens. Okay, this is our pulse. Let's see if we're capturing that. Yes, that's pretty good. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is how I would count it with my feet. Like if I were playing this alone and I needed to get a sense of the time and keep track of that pulse, I would tap my foot that way. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But as banjo players, we are used to this 8-note world. We're living in an 8-note world, so we need to subdivide further in our heads. And to help us do that, we're going to use a metronome. So we are going to double my 76 BPM, and we're going to make that 152. Okay, right there. And this is counting quarter notes. So our 8 notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's how our 8 notes are going to sit. But we can still feel the pulse like this. So we've got a lot going on here. Let me show you how it works out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of the ideas for your next step, if you want to set the metronome down, is to count the pulse with your hand. So check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one of the things you can do is actually keep your hand going as if you were playing regular claw hammer, and your hand bobbing to the rhythm will keep track of the time. Because really we can, with this section, we can knock out these quarter notes or the 8 notes if we're counting the thumb stroke as well. And that helps us keep track of time, like seconds on a clock. But I think it's cool to jettison that eventually. So you can use it for a while to help you get used to and accustomed to all of this space that we're creating. But eventually, I think it's cool to get rid of that calculating clock-like rhythm and just use your inner clock to make sense of this pulse. For example, we want to eventually do something like this. One of the things that we're so used to doing is saying we never stop the engine. That engine always goes. And I think it is cool to visually stop the engine and let those notes hang. The other thing that this does is it can loosen up your time in that bridge section. So you could wait a little bit longer and hesitate, and it's going to be okay, because this section is sort of meant to have a little bit more fluid sense of time than sort of a groovy section like the main part of the tune, where we really are kind of grooving hard and keeping track of that pulse. It's okay to abandon the idea of a clear tempo altogether, although you do want your phrasing to still sound timely and musical. So you don't want to be totally off on your timing. You still want to keep it there, but it's okay to have sort of a looser interpretation of that time. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to count off the click, but I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed about my time in this section. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I kind of stretched and played and waited a little bit longer than normal, so it's probably a little bit hard to perceive, but the overall effect should be that it sounds very open and free. And that's kind of a nice thing to do in the middle of a tune, that you're carefully keeping track of all those eighth notes. Now, we play in an eighth note world, as I said at the top of the lesson. We're always rattling out these eighth notes. So something like this, where you're freeing your audience from the rat-a-tat-tat of those eighth notes, can add a breath of fresh air into your tune and can create this sense of, I think, a world where it's a little bit more than just predictable eighth notes happening all the time. I hope you guys have fun with this. Take this idea and try to apply it to a tune that you're working on. Just keep in mind, of course, that if you walk into a jam session and call a tune, people aren't going to be really conducive, nor should they, to this kind of play, because this really is sort of a performance or arrangement type approach to old time music. So we can't expect anybody to care about this stuff in a jam situation. But in your bands at home, if you're prepping for a gig or for an album, arranging in this way can be really, really interesting. And above all, doing something like this can help you get a sense of time and your own inner clock and how you count time, how you keep track of it. I am a firm believer that keeping track of time, your inner clock, and how you translate that pulse to the music is the absolute most essential part of being a musician. So you want to have a good handle on time, and this can help you get there. Now, there is tablature available for this. This is really tricky, so it could help you if you want to see this sort of in the grid of the tablature world. That is available for download over at Patreon for patrons. Go check that out if you want to go and see the inner workings, how this all works together. This was a doozy to tab out, so those of you who are learning how to tab may want to check this out too, because it can give you some insight into how to tab out these more spacious arrangements. Okay, with that, I'm going to leave you. We will be doing a banjo bootcamp very soon, so please stay tuned. We will be doing that over on Patreon. Go over there for more information, and I will see you right here next week on Banjo Quest.